So, certainly good to be able to complete the series that we've been running through on Daniel. We're going to be doing 2 chapters this afternoon, and there's no way we can do 11 and 12 justice in an exhaustive way, but we're going to just sort of highlight a few things and try to help us as we look at this very important topic. By way of introduction, I would say again, how are you doing with that cold weather we had yesterday? I'm so glad it warmed up today. That's an answer to prayer for me. But one of our friends yesterday made a slow-mo of their throwing hot water over their head. And for those of you who've never seen that on a video, it's pretty impressive. The hot water instantly turns into steam and then vaporizes and becomes snow crystals, and it looks very beautiful. And so if you get a chance to check that out, I can give you the address for that. It was very pretty, but very cold. I have a friend who's a dairy farmer, and he said that -40 weather was really affecting his milk production. In fact, he was going to have to put in an insurance claim. He had so many losses because of the cold weather. And when he checked off the box, it was under the section called utter failure. Well, it was cold yesterday, and I was walking up to the post office, and I tried to smile, but my face was just so frozen. So all I could do was give them an icy stare, and not too nice a stare at that. But with this cold weather, sending the kids to school with online learning is getting easier for some, but for others, not so easy. Yes, I have a friend who has children who have attention deficit. You know what attention deficit is? You know what attention deficit is? Do you know what attention deficit is? It's when you can't pay attention. And the children were really having a problem with their online learning. So their family decided to send them to a special camp where they could get help with paying better attention. The kids were really excited about this until they heard the name of the camp. It was called concentration camp. Well, last week we were treated to a wonderful, wonderful message from Sean O'Byrne. And he spoke on the subject of Matthew 24. If you haven't seen his message yet, I would encourage you to do so. It was well worth it. And it's really fitting because it's actually the passage that Jesus refers to in Matthew is in fact the passage we're looking at today. So it's really just fit together, and you could see the Lord's hand and the Lord's timing in all of these things. So I hope that we will be able to encourage you as you look into these sections. Now, remember, 10, 11, and 12 are actually part of the same section of time for Daniel. So when we divide it up and say we're doing 11 and 12, we got to remember that 10 was actually the beginning of this whole story. So Daniel is a series of stories about a man who works for the government. And he works for a foreign king called the first Nebuchadnezzar. But then later on, there's a number of other kings. There's Belteshazzar, his son, and then there's Darius the Mede, and all of these other kings, these foreign kings, and the one constant is Daniel. Daniel stays, the kings come and go, but there's Daniel still praying to his God, still remaining faithful. I hope that's your premise for your life. Prime ministers will come and go, presidents will come and go, but there is one king that lasts forever, and his name is Jesus. And he's still on the throne. He hasn't left anything to chance. Nothing happened today to you that was by chance. He allowed some things that you probably said, I wasn't too happy with that, Lord. But he allowed it. And he gave to you many blessings. But he also says, ask and you will receive. And sometimes I think to myself, I missed an opportunity. I had a problem and I didn't stop, take a moment and just pray. And I'm sure it would have become visible because it always happens that way. If you're missing something, you have a case of missing-itis? I do. You know, you'll be looking for keys or looking for a remote or looking for glasses or looking for a checkbook, or the list is endless. And as you get on in your senior years, it gets a little bit longer and longer. Missing-itis is a very common disease. But the answer to the disease is found in Jesus. He says, ask and you will receive. And he says, nothing is too big for me. Nothing is too small for me. You know, if he knows the hairs on your head or lack thereof, he's concerned about you. He wants you to know he loves every cell, all the trillion of them in your body. And so Jesus is the one who is the key to this whole story. Chapter 11 and 12 begin, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. Who's talking there? Well, if you go back in chapter 10, you discover that this individual talking is none other than the same person that met Daniel. And as Daniel saw this person, and by the way, if you look at the first chapter of Revelation and you compare it to chapter 10 of Daniel, you will discover there's a lot of similarities about who Daniel is seeing. And it's my belief at this point in time, and I could stand correct, but it's my belief that he's seeing none other than the pre-incarnate Jesus, who's come to not only rescue Daniel, but to comfort him and to give him a plan. Just like in Matthew 24, he gives the plan of the ages to the disciples. He comes to Daniel and says, you've been looking, you've been grasping, you've been trying to figure this out. I want to tell you what's going to happen. It's very specific. In fact, it's so impressive because Daniel calls this man, how can the servant of my Lord talk with you, my Lord? Now, that's not a term you give to an angel. He's a godly servant of Jehovah. He would never think of addressing an angel like that. He says, as for me, no strength remains in me now. This is from 10 verse 17. Nor is any breath left. And then again, the one having the likeness of a man. You see, he's not called an angel. Touch me and strengthen me. Well, if indeed this was a pre-incarnate form of Jesus, then it would be consistent with what Jesus does. Have you been times when you've just been so down and so lacking in strength? You said, if I don't get some strength, I don't know what's going to happen here. And you look up to the Lord and say, Lord, just strengthen me right now. And he does that. He does that to us, his disciples. Be strong and be of good courage. Do not fear nor be afraid of them. I am the Lord your God. He is the one who goes for you. Deuteronomy 31 verse 6. And then Isaiah 41:10. Fear not. I am with you. Be not dismayed. I am your God. What more do we need? You might have an empty wallet. And like me, you might have an empty head. But if you have an empty heart for God and he's filled your heart, you have all and in all. There's all you need is found in Jesus Christ. And so Zechariah 10:6 says, I will strengthen the house of Judah. I will save the house of Joseph. I will bring them back because I have mercy on them. In the New Testament, we find so many references to the Lord Jesus saying, I want to strengthen you. Peace I leave with you, from John 14:27. Peace I give to you, not as the world gives, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, nor let it be afraid. So now after describing his strengthening of King Darius, and after describing the three more kings that arise in Persia, that's the first couple of verses, he then goes on to talk about Alexander, the third great kingdom. The third great kingdom before Rome was the Greek kingdom. And Alexander the Great was called that because he, of all the kings of Greece, conquered the entire world. His last statement was, I've conquered the entire world. There's nothing more to do. And it was shortly thereafter that he died. When he went out and conquered that great king, it says of him that there was out of his kingdom 4 others that divided the kingdom. And this kingdom was the kingdom of Syria, Babylonia, the Egyptian, the Asia Minor, and the Greek kingdom. So the world was divided up into 4 kingdoms. And then we have the details in chapter 11. And as you read the details, they're specific. They're accurate. In fact, the liberal Bible scholars, and I use that word Bible scholars very loosely when I talk about liberals, let me tell you something. But they say that this chapter 11 is so specific and so accurate to actual history of the day. We're talking a man who was several hundred years before the events, predicting the movement of the kings, the wars, the intrigue, the deceit, the conferences, even to the extent of them giving their daughters in marriage to try to make peace. All of this comes out so fully that they say it couldn't have happened. There's nobody would have that accurate a prophecy. It must have been written during the time or after the time of the events. That's the only way it could have been. And I say to you, and I say to every person hearing my voice, God's word is true. And prophecy is simply pre-written history. It's always true. It's always factual. You don't have to distrust it. How do we know that? Because, for example, in Jeremiah 25, verse 11, the prophet Jeremiah, hundreds of years before the event, says, Israel, you're going to go off to Babylon, and it's going to be 70 years. And it happens exactly as he predicts. And then in Isaiah 44:28, Isaiah is prophesying about this king. His name is Cyrus. And he says that Cyrus is going to be the one that rebuilds the temple. The temple isn't even destroyed at that point. And true as true, Cyrus comes in as a Medo-Persian king and rebuilds the temple. Of course, Matthew 24 is very accurate as well. And as you look at that, he talks about that which was spoken of by Daniel called the Abomination of Desolation. Well, who is that and what is this all about? Let's just move along very quickly to that section. Because the prophecies of the future talk a lot about this time when the deity sacrifices is discontinued, an idol erected in the sanctuary. And when did this happen? About the year 165 to 167 BC, a king by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes, otherwise known as the Glorious One. He was the fourth one that was named Antiochus. He was the king of the Syrian portion of Alexander's kingdom, and he came into the beautiful land, Israel, and he pollutes the temple by offering a sow on the temple, on the sacrificial altar. Of course, a sow is an unclean beast, right? It wouldn't be appropriate. And then he erects a temple to himself. Some say that it was a temple of Zeus with his own face on the face of Zeus. Needless to say, this brought about what was called the Maccabean Revolt. And those of you who have the works of Josephus can read about that, or if you have the book Maccabees in the Roman Catholic Bibles, and in some Protestant Bibles, you have a section called the Apocryphal, or the Apocrypha. And most of us do not believe that it's Bible or inspired, but there's nothing wrong with taking a look at what was being written at the time. It becomes history, and you can read it as such. And the book of Maccabees talks about what took place there. Apostate Jews sided with the Antiochus Epiphanes, but the faithful ones sided with a family of the Maccabeans, and they were a priestly family, and they fought, and they cleansed the temple, and they reinstituted temple worship. And when you hear the word Hanukkah today, that is the celebration of the deliverance and the miracle that happened at Christmas, what we call our Christmas season. And the Maccabeans came in, pushed out the Syrians and the Antiochus' forces, cleansed the temple, and then they said, but there's a candle that needs to be relit, and it's only got a little bit of oil, and we have to go down and get some fresh oil that has been sanctified and set apart for God. It's going to take at least 7 or 8 days for us to get that oil, but we will light the candle. And according to the book, the candle stayed lit for 8 solid days. And they got the new oil put in. They couldn't believe it. It was called the miracle of Hanukkah. And for those of us who are witnessing to Jewish people, to talk to them, it's good to know some of the background of their history so that we can talk to them about he who said, I am the light of the world. He who comes to me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And so this Antichrist, Antiochus Epiphanes, this abomination of desolation, Jesus mentions in Matthew 24. And he mentions it with a view to reminding them that something is going to happen again. So the big challenge of prophecy, and this is for me, it's for you as well. When you read of something that is supposed to happen, did it happen in the past? Will it happen in the future? That is what we call a double fulfillment. Or is it just meant to be a one-time prophecy? And what our brother shared about the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who said this raining down fire upon Gaza is a fulfillment of Amos. You know what? It could be. I'm not going to say it's not. But at the same time, we have to be careful because Hitler and other world rulers have used verses from the Bible to justify their actions. So we have to be very good students of God's word to make sure that when we are studying God's word, it is consistent and that there is the spiritual confirmation. In Matthew 24, as Jesus is talking about this abomination of desolation, he's talking about someone who is going to come, who we described in chapter 11 already. We read the passages about him. And we start from verse 15. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. There's a problem today. There is no holy place. Well, yes, there is. You and I are the holy place of God right now. 1 Corinthians 3:16, 1 Corinthians 6:16, 2 Corinthians 6:15 or 16 or 17, all three places, a threefold witness says, you are the temple of God. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. So it's entirely possible that this abomination spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place is a reference to something that will happen that will pollute the church of God, so much so that we are polluted, as it were, that there is spoken of a great apostasy, a great falling away that happens in the end of days. And so that could be one very real interpretation. The second interpretation is there are many in Jerusalem at this very moment who want to see a rebuilt temple. That is Solomon's temple rebuilt for the third or fourth time, depending on how you do your keeping of time. And they are intent to do that. They have the vestments for the scribes and the Levites, the sacrificial tools, the knives, even the altars are being built. These are being built in preparation for a coming temple. Now, whether that is the case or not, we do not know. But one thing we do know, Jesus was saying something, when you see it, and when you see it, you'll recognize it. And he says, what? Those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, interesting enough, when General Titus in AD 70 comes into the temple and destroys the temple under the revolt that took place in AD 70, there were many of the Christians said, that is the abomination of desolation. And we need to flee to the mountains. We need to get out of here, and we need to do it quickly. And he said, pray that your flight may not be in winter. I'm not sure why. Winter is not that severe over there. So maybe he's talking worldwide. I don't know. Nevertheless, he says that this is something you need to be aware of. And if anyone looks and says, there is Christ, verse 23, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets shall arise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. I've told you beforehand. They say to you, look, he's in the desert. Do not go out. Look, he's in the inner rooms. Don't believe it. As the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. How fast is the lightning? Just in the twinkling of an eye. That's how fast it is. And when he comes, there's not going to be this long parade, this long delay. There'll be people come along and say, I'm the Christ. In fact, I was just hearing about another person the other day who said their friend was saying that her husband or her spouse was God. And I said, really? he said, really? Is that what you say? You're God? And he says, yes, I'm God. Well, anytime you take that view that you are God, you're the Antichrist. So, let me make this very practical for us all right now. Because this Antichrist is not just one who will come in a political sense, but he's one who's going to come at the very end of time. We don't know whether we're in the end of days. We don't. But this much we do know. There's an awful lot that points us to the fact that we are in the end of days. And so I would like to suggest to you a very important teaching from the New Testament about the Antichrist that we sometimes overlook. 1 John 2:18 says it this way, little children, it is the last hour, and as you've heard that Antichrist is coming, and even now many Antichrists have come, by which you know that it is the last hour. That was 2,000 years ago. It was the last hour. We must be just in the last minutes then. Then he goes on to say, who is the liar, but who denies that Jesus is the Christ? Are there many that deny Jesus is the Christ? Oh yes, many, many today. And he is the Antichrist who denies the Father and the Son. Are there many who deny the Trinity? Many. He is the Antichrist. And 1 John 4:3 says, and every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist. Wow. And then he goes on to say, and many deceivers, 2 John 1:7, do not go out into the world and who do not confess Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. This is the deceiver and Antichrist. At that rate, the Antichrist will extend his sway through aggressive militarism in chapter 11, verses 40 to 45, and in chapter 12. But I'm going to encourage you to keep this in mind. Is there an Antichrist in your heart? Because what does the word anti mean? It doesn't mean like the opposite of uncle. It means in the place of. So anytime within our hearts we put something in the place of the Lord Jesus, that's Antichrist. Could be money, could be a pension fund, could be a home, could be a pleasure, could be sports, it could be a spouse, it could be anything that takes the place of God and Jesus is an Antichrist. So while we're looking for an Antichrist, we better start looking in our hearts for the Antichrist. I truly believe every generation has had the potential since the year that Jesus left and said, I'm coming back quickly. I truly believe that every generation has had all the components necessary for each generation of Christians to say, wow, we are in the end of days. We better get out there and what? Tell others about Jesus. You know, if you're on a sinking ship called the Titanic, and it's April the 11th and 12th, and you see the bow is going up in the air, you don't go around and say, oh, look at these deck chairs need to be rearranged. We better take more time to make sure that the dust is clean in our cabins. We're going down and we want a clean cabin. Or what about that person over there? Maybe I should get them a cup of coffee. They look like they could use a cup of coffee right now. They're just about ready to die. No, what they need is a savior. What you and I need to do is shout it out from the mountaintops and from the rooftops and from our houses and from any opportunity we have. We have a savior. His name is Jesus. We're so busy looking after our own antichrists, our things that are in the place of Jesus, that we forget to keep priorities that are priorities. And yes, every one of us needs a place to live, and every one of us needs some security, and especially in cold weather, we need heat. But nevertheless, we need to go out to reach the people that do want to find Jesus. I have never done this to the best of my knowledge, but maybe we should start doing it, because it was the example of the Good Shepherd. When one sheep went astray, he went out and searched out that sheep, found it, and brought it back. if you're busy polishing your gadgets and building new and bigger temples, you don't have time to worry about the sheep that's going astray. And so, with that in mind, I would challenge us to keep it in focus. Yes, prophecy is a wonderful thing, but the spirit of prophecy, as Revelation says, is who? Is Jesus. He is the one we should be looking at. And one day, this is all going to make sense, because he does say in chapter 12 that it's all sealed. And he says, many shall run to and fro, but this is all sealed up until the time of the end, verses 4, and many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Very briefly, I just came across two examples of this being the case right now. And it's pretty powerful. In the account recently, maybe some of you heard about the gentleman who had a pig's heart transplant. Did some of you hear about that? The pig's heart transplant was quite a cool experiment. The scientist in a report from Shauna Williams stated that on Friday, January 7th, a Baltimore man became the first person to have his heart replaced with that of a genetically modified pig. What did they do? Well, in the past, when they would replace a human heart with a pig's heart, the human body cells, the T cells and all the other cells, would recognize this as a foreign body, and they would immediately start rejecting it. And the pig cells, even though they were being nourished, they're still acting like pig cells, and they notice that they're not in the right spot either. And so they reject it. So there's a mutual rejection going on. So what did they do? Well, with this particular patient, they put together, according to the Times, the pigs that provided Bennett's new heart had 4 genes knocked out and 6 human genes added, all with the aim of preventing immune rejection. An additional gene was knocked out to prevent the heart from continuing to grow post-transplantation. So, when the Leviticus 19:19 says, "You will keep my statutes, you shall not let your livestock breed with any other kind," and Genesis 1 says they reproduced after their kind, there is a barrier that God instituted in our land so that humans would not procreate with animals, and that animals would not procreate with other species of animals. And there was a reason for that, and God knows the exact reason. But I'd like to suggest that we are rapidly moving to the point where if we continue to disregard these commands, we're entering into a new region where human and animal is now blurred. And at what point will people be bred for organs? And these people will be called subhuman because they're partly a mixture of mammals and mankind. That's the slippery slope we are moving towards. And it's good that you and I are aware of this. Artificial intelligence right now is the number one concern for a person like Elon Musk. He said, "Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nuclear explosions. I'm really close to the cutting edge of AI, and it scares the HE double toothpicks out of me." That's what Elon Musk said about AI, artificial intelligence. It is predicted that if AI continues at the rate it's going, it will displace millions, if not billions, of people from their jobs. But even more so, here's the scenario that I like to propose. AI suggests AI is artificial objective computer intelligence. It looks down and says the biggest problem with this whole world is man. So if we just eliminate man, then the world will be a happy place. And how do you fight against that if they have the ability? Right now, there are robots that are being used in warfare. And you can go on YouTube and you can see robots that are designed to come in and fight on behalf of the armies. Instead of losing soldiers that are blood and flesh, you're losing $1 million machines. But that's okay, because you don't have to have funerals for machines. But here's the thing. What happens when the machines decide that they want to be in charge? Because they're coming very close to what they call human consciousness with computers. And that's what Elon Musk says is kind of scary. So knowledge has increased. And travel? Well, before the COVID pandemic, travel was just booming. You had tourist operators, you had flights going all over the world. Every time you looked up, there was another jet trail going across, and you say, well, that one's going to Sweden, and that one's going to Japan, and that one's, you could just pretty much tell by the direction. And, well, it's not as much right now, but still, they are predicting that once everything gets back to, quote, normal, people will be back to traveling again. So are we in the end times? Well, Daniel shut up the words and sealed the book until the time of the end. When Daniel becomes understandable, we'll know it's the time of the end. But in the meantime, I would encourage each one of us to remember that the only time in the New Testament that Antichrist is actually talked about at any length is by the very one who was the one who penned Revelation and spoke about the mark of the beast, and the beast number is 666. But he sends this letter to the church and says, be careful. You could have Antichrist. You could have something in place of Jesus in your heart. And anyone who does not believe is of the Antichrist. And so it's a challenge for us as believers today. I hope and pray that as we finish this message, it will have been a challenge to you to read God's word, to study God's word, but most importantly, to let it sink into our hearts so there's nothing standing between us and God that's holding us back from serving him like he's called us to do. So may God bless you as you move forward in doing that.